Hey guys, it's Bear in a Backpack, and today we're going to be looking at Warden, Melody of the Undergrowth, developed by Cardboard Keep. So let's talk a little bit about what Warden is. Warden is a 3D action-adventure game where you play as Tavian, a young prince who is separated from his father during an intense battle. On the search for your father, you come into contact with a forest guardian known as Nyona, who informs you that you are a warden, or a protector of the forest, and that you should help her become free from her imprisonment. You agree to help, and during your search for your father and to help free Nyona, you come into contact with other wardens that help you on your quest. The gameplay of Warden is as you would expect for a 3D action-adventure game. You explore the map, you conquer dungeons, defeat enemies, and seek items and other power-ups. In addition, you'll be looking for things called motes. They're these little flame-looking things that count as currency for use in the game, as well as the items you use to unlock the doors between the areas of the game that allow you to progress through the game. Spread out throughout the game are campfires that you can use to quick travel to other campfires you have previously visited in the game. This gets really helpful later in the game because the map is actually fairly large for this game, so backtracking to areas if in case you wanted to get, maybe some more health upgrades or buy an item or something of that nature, it could take you a while to get there. So luckily you can just sleep at one of the campfires and it loads you into kind of a special campfire, zone, I guess is how I'd put it. You can go around and you can run around the area. There's a little bit of platforming involved, and it allows you to get to areas of the game a lot quicker than if you were to walk there. Now, one of the big parts of Warden is the platforming side of things. Now, a lot of times you're just going to be jumping from platform to platform, let's say a tree stump to another tree stump, or when you're playing in the forest, there's a point where you're jumping from tree branch to tree branch. It's generally fairly basic, it's not too involved, but it's still fun and interesting. In addition, you'll also be doing a lot of puzzle solving. Now, unfortunately, they say that it's supposed to be, complex and challenging puzzles. In general, the puzzles you're solving to get through the levels aren't really that complex. They're generally pretty simple. Usually you're just kind of moving a box around with a joystick that happens to be in the room. And that's not too bad, but it's not as challenging as you may think. Now, what is challenging are the secrets. Some of those rooms, I'm no code breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but they get pretty difficult. I was sitting in my room with a whiteboard and a marker trying to figure out what the code was, because there'll just be a series of lines and dots on the wall, and then a corresponding series of lines and dots with numbers attached to them, and you have to enter in a number code to open the door. In addition to the line and dot code rooms, there's also code rooms where you have to enter in a name of a person or place in order to open the door. Now, these ones, however, are actually pretty simple. Usually it's located in a location where it's pretty self-explanatory what the code's supposed to be. Sometimes they even have little pictures next to them that help you figure out what the name is supposed to be that you're supposed to enter. So those ones aren't too bad, and you can get things like health upgrades or sometimes hats. And yeah, the hats thing, it's kind of fun, but it doesn't really serve a lot of purpose in the game other than kind of a vanity item. So it's kind of fun, but I don't really understand the point of it. Now at this point we should probably talk about one of the first problems Warden has. Now that comes into play with the platforming section. So I'm assuming it's a protection measure, but when you get too close to walls, sometimes it'll forcibly push you away from them, and I'm assuming this is to keep you from getting stuck in the walls. So if the game detects you're spending just a little bit too much time on a wall, so like you're sliding on a wall or jumping into a wall, sometimes it'll forcibly push you away from the wall. Now, normally I'd be okay with this because cool, it means I won't get stuck in walls. But what usually ends up happening is I'll be trying to jump on very, very small ledges near the wall that are meant to be jumped on. Like you can see that there's items you're supposed to get by doing it. And the game will just suddenly throw you off for no reason into the pit of death below, and you'll just be sitting there wondering, why did this just happen? I have no idea, and you're just dead because the game decided that it was trying to help you. So this feature I'm not really excited about. If they could maybe tone down the amount of which it does it, that would be one thing, or it just kind of lightly pushes you away from it, that would be one thing. But as of right now, it just chucks you across the room, and that's not very good. Now, another thing I ran into is that you can get stuck in a couple places, which isn't good. There was one time I was in one of the temples, and you activate this water feature, which unfortunately gets rid of the only way out of a certain area. Now, luckily, you're not really supposed to go back to that area, so it doesn't end up usually being a problem. However, you can pretty easily fall back into that area just by jumping into it. There's no wall keeping you from going there. So if you do that, you're stuck there, and the only way out is to actually reload your save by quitting out of the game and coming back in, and it'll reload you at the nearest campfire that you saved at. And it's not like I had to completely restart the game to get back there, but it's still annoying, and there are a couple of these places, and that's not a good thing to have in your game. On your adventure, you'll meet 2 other wardens that bring their own unique skills and personality to the table. One of these wardens is Madeira, who can grow flowers out of pods that are kind of just placed around the environment, and she can use them as platforms to jump on to progress to the next area. The other warden is Bit. Now, Bit has the ability to jump into these large potion vats, and he can pop out of them and then propel himself forward using fiery jets that come out of his hands, which is kind of cool. You use it as a hover to get over gaps in the floor or other obstacles like that, and it's really kind of fun because you kind of look like Iron Man while you're doing it. He even holds his hands down at his side, and you just have these giant fiery jets coming out. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. And I really like that they make sure that each character is actually fairly unique and their abilities are useful. So last thing I want to talk about is the combat. Now, in Warden, the weapons have durability, and this can be a touchy subject because sometimes you can make it in a game where weapons have durability, but they break so easily you wonder why you even bother with them. Like, you might as well just punch enemies to death because at least your fists don't break. Whereas sometimes you'll play games where it'll be that the weapons have durability, but it takes so damn long to break something that you wonder why they even put it in there in the first place. Like, well, why? I can hit something 1,000 times before this breaks. Why do I even care? Luckily, Warden manages to find the sweet spot where they do break, but really what it does is just entice you to try new weapons, or maybe try a spear or a hammer or a sword, without feeling like you're just wasting your time with weapons in the first place. Now, the unfortunate side of this, however, is that, well, really kind of all the weapons feel the same. They're all very sluggish, they all swing the same. I mean, yeah, the spear you have a stabbing motion, and one of the swords you have a stab, but they all pretty much feel the same. They all take about the same time to swing, they all do roughly the same amount of damage. It entices you to try new weapons, but there's kind of no point. In addition to this, because they swing so slowly, I mean, it really feels like you're swinging like a sledgehammer around, which would make sense if you're swinging one of the giant hammers or like a maul or mace or something like that. But when you're swinging just a small sword, it shouldn't really take that long. And a lot of times it just slows down combat and makes it feel really kind of weird. It's something they could improve, that's for sure. Now, I also noticed a really weird effect when you're using the lock-on ability. So in Warden you have the ability to, well, lock on to enemies to track them while you're fighting with them, which is usually really handy. Unfortunately, when you lock onto him and actually kill the enemy, the whole game slows down, like almost like it's a slow motion effect, and I'm not sure if this is on purpose or not, but I realize it's intended maybe to look cool, but unfortunately all it does is it just kind of slows down the game, and especially when you're fighting multiple enemies, it's terrible. Like every single enemy you kill, it's like, and slow. It's really unnecessary, and I tested it out. Like, I tried killing enemies locked on and not locked on, and when you're not locked on, this doesn't happen. They just fall down, they're dead. So, if they're trying to go for an effect, that's okay, but they really need to maybe make it on like the last enemy in the area, because with every enemy, it's just a hindrance. It's not fun. The sound design of Warden is kind of a 50-50 hit and miss kind of thing. On the musical side, it's really good. There's a lot of cool songs in the game, and it does a really good job of capturing the environment you're in really well, such that when you're in the forest, you feel like you're in a forest. When you're in a city, you feel like you're in a city. They do a really good job of that, and also capturing the adventurous feel that you'd really kind of come to expect in a game like this. In terms of sound effects, Warden generally does pretty well. I mean, the sound effects are more or less right where they need to be. The motes make a little fun noise when you pick them up, and the kind of walking around sounds sound right. But the part where it's really weird is the combat noises. Now, when you hit an enemy, especially one that's wearing armor and you're using a metal weapon, you'd expect a metallic clinking or clanging noise, right? Well, you get this. That's weird, right? I mean, you're hitting a giant armored enemy with a sword. Why is it making a thump noise? And this mixed with the fact that there's no rumble feature when you're using a controller, despite the fact it tells you, hey, you should be playing our game with the controller, it just makes the combat feel weird, out of place, not quite finished. Like, a lot of times you feel like you're just swinging through the enemy, and yeah, he's flashing red, okay, I guess I hit him and his health bar went down, but there's not enough feedback to the combat, so it really makes the combat suffer. Warden uses a stylized cartoon art style that's very similar to that of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and in general I'm a big fan of this art style. I really enjoy it, and I thought it brought a lot of depth and personality to the characters and environments within the game. The kind of interesting thing though is that their idle animation, they kind of move around just a little too much when they're just standing there. They look as if they're like anxiously awaiting something and or like dancing a little bit. It's a little strange. It's fine. It's my own personal opinion. A little weird. One kind of weird aspect of the graphics is that when you're carrying your weapons, which you carry on your back or your side, they can sometimes clip through your character model, which normally, whatever, they clip a little bit. I mean, if any game you've played has had some weird clipping things. If you play Elder Scrolls, your character's armor will be clipping just a little bit or twisting in a weird way. That's fine. But in this case, your entire sword might be just going through your face. Like swords do, I guess. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't think they do. For instance, like I was playing as Tavian, and his axe that he just got was just equipped on his back, just sitting there. Then I looked closer and realized that the axe was just kind of halfway through his head, as if someone had buried an axe into the side of the guy's head. It looked very strange, and I'm thinking maybe they should change this because I don't think that looks great, and it seems like maybe something they could fix just by changing the angle of it. It's nothing too major, but it does look a little strange. One graphical feature I highly enjoyed, although not a new thing by any stretch of the imagination, was the way that Warden used depth of field to really play up the sense of scale of their environments. Now, of course, sometimes this did end up kind of looking a little weird in the sense that it seemed like the threshold value for where the out of focus effect would start happening was just a little too close. So a lot of times I felt like I was needing to wear a pair of glasses in order to see the environment correctly. But with a little bit of tweaking, I think it would look really, really nice. At this point, I'd like to talk about the pros and cons of the game overall. So on the pros side, it has detailed and beautiful environments, the characters each have their own unique personality, the platforming is pretty challenging and fun, it has a well-done musical score, and although nothing to write home about, has a pretty decent story, and it evokes a lot of nostalgia. And now for the con side of things. Well, the sound effects are pretty poor, as is the combat. The combat's very lackluster and could really use some help. The bugs and glitches will find you, and you will find them, and it won't be fun when you do. And the puzzles that they say that are supposed to be challenging usually turn out to be pretty simple. I mean, a lot of them really just come down to you moving a box. That's it. Move a box, put it on a button. That's about it. Some of them do get a little complicated, but I realize they're not trying to make things just stupidly difficult, but at the same time, they could maybe use a little more challenge. And finally, really the game just kind of feels unfinished. For a game that's been released fully on Steam as the final product, it really feels unpolished. And I realize that the developers are doing a really good job, however, on really talking to the community, fixing things, patching things, updating the game, and I think if they keep working on it, they'll have a pretty good game. So without further ado, let's get down to the ratings. So for gameplay, I give it a 5.5 out of 10, for story, 6 out of 10, sound, 5 out of 10, graphics, 6.5 out of 10, and your content for what you get, 6.5 out of 10. So that gives us an overall rating of 5.9 out of 10. Now, if you'd like to buy Warden Melody of the Undergrowth and try it out for yourself, you can do so by going to their Steam page. Well, that's it for this review. If you've enjoyed this review, please leave a like or comment down below, or subscribe to my channel for more gaming content.